Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is what happens when you give a developer millions of dollars to make a game in 3 weeks. It's unfinished, unsatisfying, undercooked, and probably several other words that start with "un" that I can't even think of right now. As an overall package, it's not terrible. Zombies is actually pretty fun, and the multiplayer is leagues better than last year's COD, which I can only assume was made using the population of a retirement home as a focus group. As I've said before though, this channel is focused on single player games, so I'll be covering that module in this video. I'm also going to use that as kind of something to spring off into my thoughts on the current state of the series as a whole, because I have a lot to say about that subject. So without any further delay, let's talk about... Before I get started, I just want to say that this video is going to be structured a little bit differently from my others. I'm not really going to go into as much detail about my specific playthrough, but I will be talking about the story and the major things that happen in it, all 2 of them, so if you plan to play the game for yourself, you may want to click off this video. If you don't care, go right on ahead. With this game though, we actually know a bit more than we usually do with such a recent release. After the release of Vanguard, itself a game that was made under rushed conditions owing to the debacle that was Black Ops Cold War's development, Sledgehammer began pre-production on their next contribution to the franchise, codenamed Anvil. Anvil was planned to be a sequel to Advanced Warfare, something that the studio had been yearning to make for years now, but was unable to due to corporate interference from Activision. After Infinite Warfare's reveal trailer was memed to hell and back, they were instructed to pivot to a World War II themed game instead, in order to appeal to the COD fanbase's rabid nostalgia. From that, we got a game that was so disastrous it had to have its gameplay almost completely reworked post-launch. But hey, at least it was boots on the ground, am I right, my fellow gamers? Their next planned entry in the series was a game centered around the Cold War, specifically the 1980s, focusing on an unscrupulous CIA agent named Adler. This game was co-developed alongside Raven Software in anticipation for them being upgraded from support to a 4th mainline studio. A combination of communication issues and creative differences between the 2 studios led to a chaotic, fractured development process, leading Activision to send in Treyarch to help get the game on track for a 2020 release. As a result, the game was changed from a standalone title into a half-sequel, half-reboot of the Black Ops sub-series, with the cast of characters from those games being scotch-taped into the game's narrative in an unexpectedly awkward fashion. Still wanting Modern Warfare 2 to have a full 3-year development cycle, Sledgehammer was given the unglamorous job of pumping out a game in about a year of dev time. Stapling World War II assets into the Modern Warfare engine, Vanguard was shat out into the world in 2021 to mixed reviews and a lukewarm player reception. This leads us back to where the narrative started, with the revelation that Sledgehammer was initially making Advanced Warfare 2, targeting a release year of 2025. This changed when corporate higher-ups got word that Treyarch's next title, a Black Ops game set in the early 1990s and focusing on the end of the Cold War and the Gulf War, wouldn't be ready by the end of 2023 like they were hoping. As a result, Advanced Warfare 2 was canned yet again, and Sledgehammer was tasked with making an expansion pack to Modern Warfare 2. At this point, the details get a little contradictory, with some people at the studio backing the expansion pack story, others stating it was always supposed to be a sequel, and some saying it was up in the air almost until the game was officially revealed. It just goes to show what a clusterfuck the development of these games are now. Whatever the case, the original vision for the campaign was a smaller scale story set in Mexico, presumably focusing on the conflict between Alejandro and Valeria that was hinted at in Season 3 of Warzone. In the summer of 22, however, Activision gave the imperative that the game be a globe-trotting thriller that served as a narrative follow-up to the events of the previous game. As a result, the entire campaign had to be built in 1 year, and it fucking shows. While the campaign carries with it the characteristic bombast and high production values that are expected from this franchise, complete with the obligatory NATO DoD propaganda that we all know and love, it's shackled to a borderline incomprehensible narrative where nothing eventful actually happens for like 90% of the story, and it grinds to a halt in an ending that makes the finale of Halo 2 look satisfying. The setup is that an international terrorist, mercenary, special forces soldier, whatever the game needs him to be for the current mission, has broken out of jail and is now serving as the world's most diabolical MacGuffin. Taking the role of the members of Task Force 141, a group of 4 British bad boys consisting of 2 guys who really like the Beatles and 2 guys who really like the Rolling Stones, you traverse the globe and attempt to put a stop to Makarov's machinations through any means necessary. Despite the game's short length, it actually has a pretty wide cast of characters, most of whom show up in like 1 or 2 missions and say 1 or 2 things before fucking off into the Warzone waiting room, biding their time as they wait to re-emerge into the world as part of whatever season's battle pass they're headlining. It's most apparent in this game how much the live service service model of Warzone and the insistence of the developers that it be canon to the game's world has compromised the storytelling of these games. If you only played the campaigns for the first 2 games, never touched the multiplayer or any of that, you're probably going to be confused as fuck when you see Alex, who was supposed to be dead at the end of the first game, show up alongside Graves, who was supposed to be dead at the end of the second game. These returns are never explained for anyone who didn't follow the post-launch story. Hell, they're never really explained for those who did. Alex just kind of made it out of an exploding nuclear facility, and Graves wasn't in that tank, so they're just kind of here now. Graves' inclusion in the story is doubly perplexing considering he tried to, fucking kill the main characters in the last game. Yeah, they're pissed about it, they say some mean words to him, but he just brushes it off and goes back to being a likable rogue who commanded his men to massacre an entire city in the second game. In terms of gameplay, things are broken up into 2 distinct types of missions. The first are the more traditional linear levels. These are the ones that Call of Duty is known for. You fight through cinematic battlefields, taking part in both large-scale combat and small-scale subterfuge in service of advancing the game into the next major story beat. Aside from the aforementioned lack of any quality writing, these missions are fun. I like these characters and the dynamics between them, plus it's cool how much you get to play as Captain Price. The second style of mission is called open combat. The idea here is that you're dumped into these open battlefields that can take on objectives in a variety of different ways, akin to something like Far Cry or the first Crysis game. The problem is that the objectives are uninteresting. There's only like 2 of them per mission, and Call of Duty, owing to how much it normally relies on cinematic set pieces and heavily scripted progression, doesn't offer anywhere near a dynamic enough gameplay loop for these missions to be fun for more than like 2 minutes. Basically, you wander around these lifeless, empty levels, either stealthily or loudly carving your way through brain-dead soldiers, it doesn't really matter which tactic you adopt, all while some annoying shithead is constantly bothering you over the radio to quit fucking around and do the objective. Can I just take a quick aside to say this is probably my least favorite gameplay trope ever? Yes, I can read, I know I'm supposed to find the GPS tracker, or destroy the helicopter, or whatever other bullshit. Stop fucking bothering me about it and let me do it at my own pace. There's a couple of cool moments here and there in these missions, like this part in the second one where I used a jeep to blow up a helicopter.
Take an enemy JLTV. Helo's going down!
They're working on you, Captain. Protect yourself.
I got it the second time. For the most part though, I was just going through these missions to get back to the more standard scripted ones. The one thing about these open combat missions that I haven't seen anyone else point out, but seems obvious to me, is that these were clearly supposed to be the more traditional kind of missions, but they just didn't have time to actually finish them. The one where you play as Gaz in the apartment block is where I think this is the most apparent, since it literally turns into a regular mission at the end. Guaranteed they just didn't have the time to fill these levels out with set pieces and cool moments, so they just blocked it out in whatever program they used to make levels, sprinkled some enemies and pointless objectives around, and called it a day. Trying to advertise it as a brand new gameplay mechanic was pretty clever though. Other than that, gameplay additions are expectedly minimal. If you're one of the crowd that bitches about COD being the same every year, this will probably piss you off, but if you're a longtime fan who actually likes the series gameplay, this will make you happy. What won't make you happy is the story itself. I'm not going to pretend that Call of Duty is known for its excellent writing or thematic complexity, but the series has mostly served up narratives that are at least passable, with a few standouts that I would consider actually good. The story of Modern Warfare 3 falls into precisely neither of these categories. If I had to describe it in one word, I would say it's weird. Not in a cool David Lynch way, but in a this was written for my high school lit class way. The story structure is repetitive, with the main cast meandering around the Middle East and Russia looking for Makarov, only to find out that he's not there, they blow some shit up, and then they leave. Makarov himself is given an odd treatment. He has some charisma, his actor does a decent job, and he comes across as intimidating, but his presence in the game is entirely front-loaded, with him showing up in cutscenes constantly for the first half, before he largely disappears in the second. While Call of Duty as a franchise is known for campaigns that focus on several different soldiers across multiple theaters of war, Modern Warfare 3 confines itself mostly to the 4 members of Task Force 141, with Captain Price being the closest thing to a main character. The game jumps back and forth between members of this group almost haphazardly, as it chronicles their attempts to find and capture or kill the Big Mac himself. While the dynamic between these guys is somewhat enjoyable, it often feels like Gaz and Ghost are just sort of there, not really doing a whole lot, while Price and Soap are the ones who primarily move the story forward. Aside from the Big Four, in the intro mission you play as an initially unidentified Special Forces soldier who, in a pretty cool twist, turns out to be one of Makarov's mercenaries. I thought this was a neat twist, with you breaking the main villain out and fighting alongside him. This presented a really cool opportunity for the writers to play with Call of Duty tropes and set up some cool scenarios regarding the player's shifting allegiances, but nah, they didn't do that. You also play as Farah for like 2 missions, both of which are entirely inconsequential to the main story. Also do a brief stint as Graves, giving orders to his boys aboard a gunship to blow an airfield held by Russians all to hell. There's an interesting mission where you play as Laswell sneaking into a Russian military base, and finally we got this game's take on No Russian. Right off the bat, I don't really fault the writers for not being able to come up with anything near as shocking as the 2009 original. MWII's No Russian is probably one of the single most controversial levels ever included in a video game. For those who don't know, if they actually exist at this point, this mission puts the players in the shoes of a CIA agent who is undercover in Makarov's organization. In the original mission, you work with Makarov to carry out a mass shooting in an airport in Russia before he shoots and kills you during the escape, implicating the US in the attack and leading to the Russian invasion depicted in that game. The world of 2009 was different than the one of 2023 though. When I first played through this mission as a 13-year-old, I was amazed by how daring and brutal it was. When the remaster came out and I played through it as a 25-year-old though, I was just kind of bummed out by it. To quote one of the developers of the original Postal on explaining why they replaced the game's final elementary school level with something completely different, mass shootings aren't shocking anymore, just depressing. All that is to say that I think the writers did about the best they could with this mission by having you play as one of the victims this time instead of one of the perpetrators. I do have to wonder though what the point of even including this in the first place was. While the original No Russian was shocking, it served a place in that game's narrative, forming what was essentially the inciting incident for a majority of the central conflict. While it was a little contrived and MW2's story was pretty ridiculous overall, it served its purpose and established the gravity of the situation. Here it's barely a side note, it's a conflict that is set up and then resolved in the very next mission when Farah destroys the plane's black box. Not only does it not hit anywhere near as hard as the original, it's not even an important event in the story. The only thing it really accomplishes is that it confirms what the player already knew: Makarov is a dickhead. It's not even the only airplane-related terrorist attack he carries out in the story. Later on, he carries out an attack on the Verdansk Stadium so he can distract 141 from explosives he set in an airport. So it really does make me wonder if the only point of this mission was so they could include that shot of the No Russian text message in the trailer. So after a long, or well, I guess kind of short actually, series of missions where the main characters dick around and accomplish nothing in particular, you reach what feels like the halfway point of the story. Makarov has been sighted in London and is suspected of planning to carry out an attack there. The boys saddle up and head there, and it finally starts to feel like the story is actually going somewhere. After some brief undercover work that doesn't really amount to anything other than an excuse to have you pet the dog from ghosts.
Use your surroundings to blend in. She saw you. Stay hidden.
Mark's moving. Keep on her.
You pursue Makarov and his homeboys into the London Metro, where you discover he's trying to blow it up and spread nerve gas around the city. You attempt to defuse the bomb, but are confronted by Makarov, who kills Soap in the game's first dramatic moment. I actually like this scene. Soap is one of the main characters, but he gets killed in a very sudden manner. It makes it kind of horrifying and actually hammers home how chaotic and violent these operations can get. Makarov escapes as your backup arrives, and you're able to defuse the bomb. At this point, we finally had a big development in the story, the narrative is finally reaching its rising point, and the stakes are personal now. Laswell finishes a report on the mission, the boys bury Soap's ashes at sea, and the hunt for Makarov can now really begin. You're fucking with me, right? Seriously, is this a meme? The game's story was just getting good and then it ends? What foul form of fuckery is this? That's literally the goddamn halfway point. I was absolutely blown away by this. I mean, I knew Soap got murked, that was spoiled for me, but the game ends immediately after? Fuck off. This is the Season 6 finale of The Walking Dead all over again. So that is the entire story of Modern Warfare 3 summed up in about a page, with like 3 paragraphs dedicated to a barely relevant mini-essay about the impact of a mission from a game that came out 12 years ago. The only thing I really left out that's, I guess, kind of major, is that Shepard gets captured by Makarov like halfway through, and you have to save him, but that doesn't really lead anywhere, so who gives a shit? Fuck, man, that was about as satisfying as my sex life. The only game I've played recently that I can recall that's as much of a climactic letdown is Stygian, but at least most of that game was awesome. This is like one of those Steven Seagal movies you get off the rack at Family Dollar, but I got scratched somehow and it just ends after they shoot his dog or whatever. Now that I'm done talking about the campaign, I want to take a moment here at the end of the video to briefly sum up my thoughts on the rest of this game and the state of the series as a whole. The biggest thing I want to bitch about is the file size, which is absolutely gargantuan. It's like 100 gigs plus another 100 from Modern Warfare 2, which you also have to have installed if you want to do the carry forward or if you're on console, meaning that the final size clocks in at nearly 200 gigabytes. That's obscene. Really hear what I'm saying here. It's not absurd, it's not stupid, it's not ridiculous, it's obscene. Like writing fuck on the side of your airplane. Zombies is actually pretty good. I would have preferred something more traditional, but whatever, the DMZ assets gotta go somewhere, I guess. The multiplayer is way better than last year as well. I'm not a COD YouTuber, so I'm not going to go in-depth on it. I'll just say the pros are that the movement is great and the maps are good, cons are that all the MWIII guns are trash, and Packet Burst makes me want to go out and get a kill streak in real life. The elephant in the room is SBMM, or skill-based matchmaking for those of you who actually go outside. I'm not against it in concept, and I actually think it's a good idea to have it, but the way they do it is kind of fucked up since A, it only takes into account your last 5 games and not your whole career, and B, it prioritizes KD matching over connection matching, which is bad if you live in the middle of bumfuck nowhere like I do. While the multiplayer is good this year, it's kind of hard to say that it feels like a finished product. With the knowledge that it was originally supposed to be an expansion, combined with the absence of anything even resembling quality control regarding the UI and server connection, it still comes across feeling kind of half-baked. Don't get me wrong, I still enjoy playing it, especially after modern Snail Fare 2, but it's still kind of ridiculous that a $70 game made by a billion-dollar company has this many flaws. Why is the UI so dog shit? Why is the connection so unstable? Why does the campaign feel like it was made in a year? Wait, I actually know the answer to that one. Why do I need to restart the game every time there's an update? Why is every update bigger than Death Stranding in file size, even though that contains Norman Reedus's, like, DNA sequence or some shit? Why do I need to do detective work to figure out how to promote my friend to lobby leader? I've been playing these games for 15 years now, and in the past 5, I feel like with every one of these I end up saying, it's good, but. Why does there always have to be a but with these games now? Why can't it just be good? It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be amazing, hell, it doesn't even have to be great, just good. They always either egregiously fuck something up, like Modern Warfare 2019, which had probably the worst maps I've ever seen in a shooter, or they just have a shitload of tiny QOL issues that make it obvious they have zero playtesters in these studios. Say what you will about older CODs, they weren't perfect, and I myself loved some and hated others, but at least you could get the goddamn things up and running within 2 minutes. With this game, I had to update my graphics drivers, update the game, restart the game after I updated it, open up the COD HQ and start it from there, restart the game again because of an update, and then wait 15 minutes for shaders to pre-install, and Jesus Christ, just let me play the fucking game. I'm not a fan of the Microsoft buyout. I think it's bringing them too close to having a monopoly on the American games industry, but the silver lining is that I'm hoping maybe the new management will be able to put out more polished products. He's corporate, but I get the feeling that Phil Spencer at least plays games. Hell, he was wearing a Hexen shirt at some conference a few months back, so he clearly likes his deep cuts. Rumors around the industry say that guys at the COD studios are looking forward to having more creative freedom under Microsoft, and I can only hope they do. Call of Duty at its core is an anthology series, meaning that it has a degree of flexibility with regards to story and setting that a lot of games don't. I want to see them do more interesting stuff with these games, as opposed to the 1200th World War II game or Modern Warfare 34. I want to see them do other conflicts, like the Korean War, or the Spanish Civil War, or even World War II again, but the parts of it that they haven't covered, like Finland or Yugoslavia, or the entire fucking Chinese theater. They don't even have to confine themselves to just historical conflicts either. I, for one, would love to see them tackle sci-fi shit again. Not 5 years in a row like they did from Black Ops 2 to Infinite Warfare, but off and on. Stuff like a post-apocalyptic game or steampunk or some weird shit. A while back I got really bored one day and wrote out a whole thing about a Call of Duty game set in the Star Trek universe focused on the war between the Bajorans and the Cardassians. It would have 3 campaigns like the older CODs, one where you played as a Bajoran rebel, one where you were a Cardassian occupier, and one where you were a merc for the Federation, like a human or a Klingon or some shit. That's never gonna happen, but you get my point. What I'm saying is the sky's the limit for what they can do with these games, and I wish they would start to take advantage of that. Plus, just imagine the reveal trailer for that Star Trek game. You see these Spec Ops guys getting ready to breach a building, and then they pull out these laser guns, and one of them says, "Suck lasers to kill." Don't even try to tell me that wouldn't be badass. Get the fuck out of here. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this overly long rant from a washed-up COD player who also has a variety of other interests. This video was really negative, which I don't like, but it was cathartic to bitch for 10 minutes. The next few videos will be more positive, hopefully, and overall, I don't want to come across as being similar to certain other YouTubers who have been uploading daily videos about how dead COD is for the last 4 years. I love this series, I like playing it, but it just makes me sad sometimes. I'm mostly going to play games that don't make me sad, so I look forward to getting back on track with some good quality video games. Maybe with less war crimes, but we'll see when we get there. Hey everybody, if you made it this far, I just want to say thanks. It means a whole lot. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all your standard YouTube stuff that you always hear. And other than that, I will see y'all in the next video. Goodbye.